Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to day 296 of Humanity Rising. Today is a very auspicious day because after more than a year, approaching a year and a half of our pandemic, out of which Humanity Rising rose in May of 2020, after nearly 300 sessions, community building, coalition building, the establishment of a master's in regenerative action, a BA in global skills and regeneration. We want to launch today through our partnership matrix, the Global Regeneration Corps. In the spirit of John Kennedy's Peace Corps, launched in the 1960s. But the Global Regeneration Corps is not being launched by a single organization or a single country. It's being launched by a movement that's coming together at a very critical time in human history when we are literally running out of time to take the kinds of actions necessary to preserve human life and the global ecology as we know it. That's our program today. We welcome all of you. And now, as we always do on Humanity Rising, before we launch in, let us take a moment and let us pause. Let us center ourselves in our bodies. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes and place your attention on your heart. And for the next 90 seconds or so, listen to your heartbeat in a spirit of gratitude and thanksgiving that you're alive. We're all alive at this most extraordinary, fragile, and potentiated moment in the human journey.
Hello.
Thank you, everyone. Now, with an open heart and a heart full of gratitude and love for each and every one of you joining our session today, I want to begin by setting our global context for where we are July 2021, planet Earth. I'd like to share my screen and Good. This is where we are, my dear friends. If you look at this chart, this is global trends, some major mega trends over the last 250 years, and you'll see that since around 1950, scientists have called our collective experience the Great Acceleration. And we've hit 2021, and quite literally, the world is spinning out of control. And if you've read the article in Arctic News that we've been passing around and putting up on our Ubiverse and through various blogs, basically scientists are saying that we have now reached 2 degrees centigrade in global temperatures over pre-industrial levels. And we've passed 400 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. I think the most recent data is about 420. So our global situation is one in which complexity, technology, volatility of all kinds are accelerating. Climate change, biodiversity loss, environmental degradation are spinning out of control. And what the scientists that wrote the Arctic News piece are now predicting by 2026 is what they're calling an extinction event. That when you raise your global temperatures to the 2 degrees centigrade threshold, you pass 400 parts per million. We have 4.5 billion years of evolutionary history now on planet Earth. And when we do that, things begin to radically alter, particularly when in the middle of this mix is the radical release of massive quantities of methane coming largely out of the Arctic Ocean and out of Siberia. In the last 2 weeks, there have been over 80 countries around the world that have experienced extreme weather events. Most of them didn't make the headlines except locally. We heard about Germany and the massive flooding there that took the lives of hundreds of people. In the western part of North America, we have 8 major fires and over 75 minor fires. One fire alone, what they call the bootleg fire in Southern Oregon, is so vast that it's created its own weather system. And the firefighters, because it's in such an inaccessible area of mountains, are expecting it to burn essentially unimpeded until around November. In the last 24 hours in China, in central China, along the Yangtze River, there was flooding that caused the evacuation of over 1.2 million people, with many, many deaths. And an iPhone factory was inundated. And that just gives you an idea of the hyper complexity where small events anywhere can have major effects everywhere. So the single greatest challenge for humanity at this moment, without question, is how do we regenerate the planetary ecosystem? How does humanity, in this moment of duress, in this moment of choice, so cohere together with a single purpose that we use the energy that is almost unimaginable within the realm of human technology and capacity for a single purpose. And that is to regenerate the ecosystem within which humanity lives and breathes and has its being. So that's very succinctly put our context. And let me say a word about Ubiquitins' mission within this. And the point that I want to make here is that I would say before the pandemic, before everything shattered in our world, before Humanity Rising, Ubiquity was a single university with a mission. And what has transpired since the beginning of the pandemic and since the establishment of Humanity Rising is we're no longer a single institution with a mission. We're now part of a movement within which ubiquity has its place. And I would say that ubiquity and the movement that has come out of Humanity Rising, that you will hear represented with the other speakers today, is really to provide people and organizations with the critical and strategic networking skills required for navigating increasing hypercomplexity and collaborating together to solve escalating global crises. Wherever you are in the world, we have to navigate an increasingly hyper-complex world that, as we saw in the last slide, is spinning out of control. And we have to now come together with a single purpose of regenerating the ecosystem within which we find ourselves. And we need to focus on the Gen Zs and the millennials. They're ground zero. They're the generations that are coming up that are both reaping the whirlwind of a world untended and have the capacity and the energy and the imagination that if they were trained appropriately, if they were unleashed with the skills and the mindset and the tool set around regeneration, could do everything that is needed to turn this thing around. And that's part of what we're going to talk about today, is that however dire the situation is, the planetary ecosystem, if regenerated, could solve all our problems in just a few years. Because what the Gen Zs and the millennials most desperately want are the social innovation and purpose-filled skills so that they can have an impact in the world. They're done with the system. They're done with capitalism. They're done with neoliberal economics. And they're looking for how they can come together to have the kind of impact that they want in their hearts to have, and which history demands that they provide. And that's why the Global Regeneration Corps has been launched. And that brings us to this Master's in Regenerative Action and Bachelor's in Regenerative Action and the Global Regeneration Corps. That's what this movement is coming together. The MRA and the BA and the GRC are not held by any single institution. This is being held by all of us together. And we invite every single person listening to this Humanity Rising session to feel welcome. We want to launch through the MRA and the BA and the Global Regeneration Corps a mass movement that will include not only the people present here today, not only the 350 to 400 partnering organizations of Humanity Rising, but the partners of all of our partners and companies and international institutions, educational institutions around the world. This is quite literally the moonshot 2030. President Kennedy challenged America to put a man on the moon in 10 years, and we did that. Today, it's not a single nation. It's all of us, everywhere, humanity rising in all of its splendor that needs within a very short period of time. And we don't even have 10 years to launch the regeneration of planet Earth. And we're doing it through training programs that we're going to be describing. We're doing it through a global regeneration core that we'll be talking more about and we'll be reiterating in Humanity Rising sessions to come. And our goal through these programs, through this movement and this matrix of partnerships is to mobilize the Gen Zs and the millennials. The oldest Gen Zs turned 18 this year. They don't want to go to college as business as usual. They want to change the world. They want to have impact. They want to develop their personal mastery so that they can navigate hypercomplexity. And they want to come together with their peers so they can actually have a physical, tangible impact in the world. And that's what we've come together to provide them at this moment of deep crisis. So that, my friends, is what we are about, what we're launching today with the Global Regeneration Core. We're launching this as a movement. And what we want to now do is just have a number of the principles that have been coming together through Humanity Rising to speak to us, to share their vision of this great enterprise. And then we will edit this and send this out as widely as we possibly can, because nothing less than the regeneration of our planet will suffice to save humanity and our place in the planetary ecosystem. So I'd like to start by introducing Ed Mueller. Ed, as you all know from previous sessions on Humanity Rising, is the founder and president of the University of International Cooperation. He's been active through the UN Commission on Biodiversity for many decades with a single purpose around regeneration of the planet. He's played a major role in certainly my thinking and getting all of us to focus on the vision and meme around regeneration. He's preparing a course, a global survey on regeneration for our masters in regenerative action. So Ed, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your vision. And thank you for your tireless effort to mobilize us, which has been central in getting us to today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you all of you who are listening for being here with us. This isn't about individuals, it's about really getting this to mainstream, and that's what we're here for. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into what Jim already gave us a preview, which is the current situation, why we need regeneration. But more than that, I want to give a very concrete example, which is what we're doing in Costa Rica, trying to transform, or in the process of transforming the country into a model for other countries to follow, other bioregions to follow. We need to really move fast, as Jim said, and I think we have all the knowledge we need. We can still do research, but we need to do action. This is not about discussing definitions. We lost 20 years discussing what sustainable development was, and we never got there. So I just want to go through this quickly because we don't have too much time. But first, some questions. Are you as a person, are you as a community, as a family, a group of friends prepared to live in the future? And how do you imagine that future? How will it be? Are we in a planetary collapse, as Jim described? How do you find that your surroundings, are they stable? Throughout all our evolution, humanity depended on nature. And starting with the Greek philosophers, going through other philosophers like Descartes, through the physicists like Newton, that started separating the complexity into simple processes, we lost track of what our relationship with nature is. We told people, we educated people, environmental education, that we need to take care of nature. Nature takes care of itself. We should have told people, look, if nature does not function, we're not here. So we really need to allow nature to provide us with all the abundance and happiness and beautiful life that we've been able to enjoy. That is now coming to a very quick end if we don't cross that bridge again to become one with nature. Nature has sent us lots of warnings. I mean, all the things that we're seeing around. Last year, we broke all records, even with COVID. And now nature has done us a big last favor. I call it a fire drill by sending us something that we can't even see, but that put all of humanity on its knees. And together with this, over the last year, and especially over the last weeks, it is wanting to show us who is in command. And if we don't realize that we are basically insignificant in this process, and that nature will be the one that defines if we stay here or not, and learn how to nurture all these processes so that we can actually thrive again. And that's what regeneration is about. So regenerative development is moving forward into this new horizon, this new paradigm. Yes, we have artificial intelligence, the fourth industrial revolution. A lot of people are betting on this. A lot of people are betting on that we'll be able to create a second planet in Mars or whatever, or on the moon. I think technology will be definitely helpful, but it won't be the true solution. The solution is human-based, and a deep consciousness and a change in our behavior. We thought we were inheriting a planet from our elders, but actually we are borrowing a planet from the next generations, from our kids, from our grandchildren, and we're not giving it back to these coming generations in a situation that they'll be able to thrive and enjoy as we have. I remember all the discussions, the Brundtland report, where we came up with the definition of what sustainability was. Over 500 million results in Google, entries in Google. We never got to implement sustainability. And these future generations know it. They're not happy with us. We are just at a critical moment where we have to decide if and how we want to keep on living on this planet. One of the key, say, milestones in my process, when we were already starting to work on the conceptual development of regeneration about 12 years ago, maybe a bit longer, was in 2009 when the first study of the planetary boundaries came out. In 2015, it was updated. And basically what the scientists did was define the major changes at a planetary level. And these major changes are what has moved humanity and planet Earth into the anthropocene. That means that the changes the planet is living through, we are causing them. So humans are now the main cause of any planetary change that's happening. it's interesting for many people that biodiversity loss is basically the first important boundary that we have gone into the high risk area of losing our safe operating space, humanity's safe operating space. It's followed by fertilizers, which have very smartly kept under the radar. The petrochemical industry has funded, in many cases, it's called lobbying in some countries. In our countries, it would be corruption. But it's happening. Nobody is actually even thinking of changing the main patterns of producing our food, which are destroying the planet at such a speed. Land use change and climate change. Climate change is still in fourth place, but it's growing exponentially. And all of these are related. There is a new update coming out this year. Rockström gave an interview where ocean acidification and fresh water are also now above the high risk area. So we already have then overstepped 6 of these planetary boundaries to a point where humanity is in danger. And agriculture is responsible for 80% of all these global changes. It's only responsible for 30% of climate change, but basically the planet collapse is caused by agriculture, the way we produce our food. I don't know who was smart enough to think of putting poison on what we're going to eat. But anyway, we have to face this. Biodiversity loss, it's all over the media. We've had so many meetings. I used to be part of these COP meetings. In 2010, we met in Nagoya and developed a strategic framework for biodiversity to halt biodiversity loss. This report came out last year. After 10 years, none of the 193 countries even got close to implementing a break on loss of biodiversity. Climate change, we are very aware that we had till last year to flip everything around. In spite of COVID, we still missed the point. We're now in runaway climate change, according to many of the scientists. And we just have to look around. I mean, people are not aware of these impacts. Many cities will just be underwater over the next few years. Fires, I mean, the whole system is collapsing. Australia, we saw massive fires that killed or harmed over 3 billion animals. Well, today Siberia is in these fires. And all of this is accelerating the heating of the planet. All of this is putting out more CO2, where we used to think that forests was what was going to save humanity by capturing the carbon. Canada, with over 50 degrees centigrade, where billions of animals, shore animals, were just dying from the heat. And at the same time, in southern Brazil, birds froze because of very cold, extreme cold temperatures that never even happened in the records that we have in these areas, killing, we don't even know how much of nature was killed there. Europe, Central Europe, it's not only Germany, it's Belgium, it's Luxembourg, it's all over the place. And these are pictures that they're hard to believe. They're like science fiction, you know, how these old places that have been there for hundreds of years are just now collapsing. And Jim mentioned China. That's not on the media right now. So are we going to look at our extinction and live through it? Or are we actually going to work with these younger generations and solve our problems? It's not only these important things I just mentioned of the planetary boundaries. I mean, degradation of land, we're losing so much soil, it's incredible. COVID is a result of wrong human behavior and the loss of biodiversity. And it's not lack of knowledge, it's not lack of science. We have all the data, information, knowledge that we need to be able to turn this around. This was also mentioned in the chat. We have lost our ability to transform all of this into wisdom. And this is what we have been working on for the last few years. and asking questions. What are our aspirations? I've heard so much about Singapore as a model city, which other cities have to follow. Well, Singapore exceeds its biocapacity in terms of its ecological footprint by 10,000%. So it is not an example of a successful city. It's using so many resources. I mean, 10,000%, I can't even imagine that number. So we really need to aim differently. And we need to realize that we are responsible for the future. It's not a government, it's not United Nations, it is humanity as a whole. So we really need to work from civil society upwards. We need to involve everybody in this chain of, it's actually a chain of reactions that we need to reverse. And we need to start also asking questions of what is really important. I mean, the UN, the governments, organizations, experts have been telling us that we need to learn to adapt to a changing planet. I'm not willing to do that. I don't think adaptation is a solution. I'm not willing to sit down and wait to learn how to live in a collapsing planet. We still have the opportunity to build the future we want. And just look at nature. We gave it a few months vacation last year, and it popped up. It cleaned up the skies. It cleaned up the rivers. The fish came back. The life came back to the oceans. And now we're killing it off again. So if we let nature, give nature a chance, it will cooperate with us. That, I think, sending us the virus and showing us that it is resilient gives me the hope. But we need to realize that we are nature. We are one with nature. So this means we have to reinvent ourselves. And I used to think of revolutions. I've been fighting. I've been meeting with presidents, with congresses, trying to change it from there. I don't believe that we'll be able to do a revolution. We need to evolve. We need an evolution. We need to go from an ego economy where man is on top, the woman underneath, and life at our feet. In a transition, a lot of people are aiming for the eco-society, the eco-economics. But that's only a transition phase. We need to go to a new stage where humanity is in service of life on the planet. And we have the ability to do this. This means bring back the feminine principle into our governance structures. That is the principle of caring. Leonardo Boff describes it as that society of caring. Mother Earth cares for us. And that's why we call it Mother Earth. So we need to bring this up into many of our decisions, that it's not about us, not about greed. It's actually about all of humanity caring for each other and working together. For us, regenerative development is actually moving away from the reductionist traditional scientific approach to a more holistic approach, where we understand that life and ecosystems, biodiversity, are the basis of all our development. If they do not exist, we are not alive. So we need to look for that relationship with nature where all life forms are benefited. An environmental impact assessment is still legal, but it's immoral because it allows us to keep on destroying and reduce that destruction. That's what sustainability is about. Make less impact. Now it has to be really bringing back life to Earth at all levels and measuring it differently. GDP has never measured development. Why don't we measure our development based on hope and on happiness? And we have the conditions. We know the science. Ratan Lal published this a year and a half ago. He said over this century, we could reverse climate change just by changing the way we manage land, changing our agriculture, changing cattle production, not getting rid of it. Actually, cattle production is one of the ecosystems that fixes more carbon. But regular science and reductionist scientists are saying we have to get rid of cattle. So we need to look at that ecosystem thinking. It's beyond systems thinking to actually have the solutions. Rodale has been working on this for many, many years. Rodale Institute, starting with the founder. And actually there you can see that regenerative grazing systems can fix today, if we transform these systems to holistic grazing, we could actually capture more carbon from the sky and put it down beneath our feet than what is emitted globally. So even if we wouldn't transition to better energies, to electric cars and whatever, we would still be able to reverse climate change. If we add regenerative agriculture, wow, there we're talking about reversing the damage in 3 decades. And we know how to do this. So this is what we're talking about, action, and not being part of that spectators of a new normal that is not going to be a normal. So let's co-create that better future together. And what we've done is we started a strategy in 2018 called Regenerate Costa Rica to build the future one. So instead of fighting the system, we're just, as Buck Fuller said, making a new system that will turn the old system obsolete. So we have now turned this degraded pasture lands into abundance. This is a community farm. We started with COVID because people didn't have what to eat. 30 families producing about 8 tons of food per month in 1 hectare land. And that same soil brought back ecosystems. So in a short survey we did in March, we already had 79 species of insects that came back to that area. So we can see how we can help nature really bounce back in such a accelerated and abundant way. All we need to do is move away from our traditional thinking. It is about learning and empowerment. It's about bringing the children together, bringing the communities together, and having them see that there are alternatives. And this requires education. I mean, we've worked with project management at a master's level in regeneration for quite a few years now. We actually launched 2 years ago the first certificate on regenerative entrepreneurship. We're now launching this first responders for regeneration at the local level. But then I discovered Ubiquity through Humanity Rising and GPM. We've been working with them for many, many years. And we came up with this beautiful idea that's really going to be revolutionary, allowing people to network. The Regenerative Communities Network, I'll mention this maybe at the end of the session, allows us to have bioregions that are doing regeneration, like Regenerate Costa Rica, where students can come and work on regeneration in practice, in the field. This was sponsored by Capital Institute, and we're now going to increase the amount of bioregions globally. And we're already Ubiquity is using a passport. So instead of having a degree hanging on the wall, it's more like a tailor-made educational learning process that any student can design what they want, and we'll have different supports for that. So I just hope my 9-year-old son is able to thank me for having tried. I hope he can thank me for having really given him a future in a few years. And I just don't want him to ask me why I didn't give him a chance for life, just to satisfy my own greed. So will we act on time? And I think that is the biggest question. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you so much. As you can see, everyone, Ed is demonstrating extraordinary leadership there in Costa Rica to create a regenerative country that could be a model and an inspiration for the rest of the world. I don't know of any other country anywhere in the world that is doing as much as Costa Rica is. And Ed is at the forefront of that enterprise. So thank you, Ed. I'd like to now bring in Leslie Southwick Trask. She's the Chief Development Officer of Ubiquity University. She came to us through Humanity Rising, and we became acquainted, and she very quickly demonstrated talent and leadership, and is now the one who's really the point person organizing the various institutions that are coming together into the coalition for our Masters in Regenerative Action, among a number of other things for which she's responsible. So Leslie, welcome. And I turn the podium over to you.
Thanks, Jim. And I just want to do a shout out to the After Chat group because today is their 60, their 1 year anniversary. And so for 1 year, the dedicated group has been meeting and talking about these issues. And so Stan, that brilliant idea that you launched a year ago yesterday, happy birthday. You know, what I'm going to be talking about, Jim, is that, Ed put out for us a very significant challenge about the acting in now. And what I want to talk about is how are we going to act in the now? And the way that we have been developing and embodying the Master in Regenerative Action is that we've looked into 2030 and we see a world in which we are in regenerative harmony with this magnificent planet. We know that this requires a quantum leap. There's no question this is going to require a massive leap. And we also believe that this new reality is already here. It was evident in what Ed is doing in Costa Rica. It's evident in the chat in terms of what people are doing in their own place and space in this world. We know it's here. The thing about this shift, though, is that it requires us to have a new type of consciousness, a different frequency from which we act. And so that consciousness is unity consciousness. And we know that that unity consciousness lives within each of us and that we are already encoded with a blueprint and a pathway. Each of us humans have this blueprint in us. The question is, how do we get access to it? And that's what the MRA and our Global Regeneration Core are all about, accessing our blueprints. Each of us have a piece to the puzzle, every one of us. That's why we're here. So we're seeking courageous co-creators who want to come in and be part of downloading their blueprint, adding that piece to this puzzle that is what we call the MRA. So we see the MRA actually as a calling. We see it as a global collaborative movement for regeneration. And that means that the global collaborative movement is that it is all of us in a rhythm, in a synchronicity that is connected to this reimagining, recreating this planet in which we are so gracefully living on. We're not gracefully doing it right now. I think we have a lot of grace in us in those blueprints that we are about to download. Of course, because we are part of a university, we are able to provide the accreditation for this work, the accredited master degree in regeneration. But it also is, we have a master's in tolerance and global studies. We have a master that's emerging around happiness. We have a master in wisdom studies. I mean, the thing about being part of the Ubiquity ecosystem is that we have the ability to credentialize competency and the new competencies, the spiritual competencies, the regenerative competencies that are part of this calling that we're in. We also have the capacity to certify regeneration competencies in different forms of certification. And so Shelley is going to talk to us more about that. But, if the master track isn't for you, but you want to be certified in your regenerative competency, we have the ability to do that. And so we know that we have specific skills that are leading us into this work. And of course, the MRA is distinct because it is about impact. And our impact projects are critical in how, in fact, it's the organizing principle. We are organizing around the impact projects so that when you look at your impact project, you will build the learning pathway and access the tools that you need for that particular project. And all of these projects are linked into the global movement. We're also, as Jim has introduced, we're humans. We are humans doing this work. And so we need to gather together in a human activity. And that's what the Global Regeneration Core is. The movement is how we connect and interconnect. The outcomes are the ways in which we build our competencies and recognize them. And who are we? Well, we are a member of the Global Regeneration Corps. And so we are developing the MRA, this calling of the first responders into this pathway. The way I want us to also understand, though, is that as we do this, we're building regenerative capital. Think about it for a moment. As we launch and pioneer into these new arenas of regeneration, we are accessing wisdom that is new for this planet and old for this planet if we go into the indigenous teachings. These are all part of a regenerative capital. That capital is in practice that we use. That capital is in the wealth that we create in the land and in the ecosystems of which we are a part. What we're saying in this is that it is not just we do a project, we fix a bit of part of the world, we regenerate that part of the world, and then we move on. No, the learning that's acquired through that impact project needs to be fed back into the entire ecosystem. So if we have 1 million projects in action, incubated and invested, as Joel's going to talk about, through our incubator accelerator, as well as through our investment funds, we actually are building a regenerative capital. So when I think about this absolutely incredible invitation to create not only a regenerative planet, but regenerative capital, I start to realize that it's going to take a lot of people. And these are some of the partners that we have. There's this, and I have to apologize, Ed's slides are so much better than mine. My slides are what I can do. My blueprint includes strategy. It doesn't necessarily include PowerPoint capability. But nevertheless, these are the partners that have already gathered. They're growing every day. Just last week, I talked to a wonderful group who are going to bring in regenerative vocational skills. So, we're gathering all these competencies, all these humans that have been working in this field for decades and are now having that invitation alignment into the network so that their work, their wisdom, their know-how can be shared with all of us. And of course, at the trunk of all of our partners is you and me. We are what gives life to these partnerships as they weave in and bring their tools and bring their wisdom and bring their courses, all of this skill set that we are accessing and creating in real time. I guarantee you that in a year's time, a whole other set of tools will be in play in our network because they will be the fruits of the impact work that we're doing. When we think about, though, if you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, I'm not living in Costa Rica, I'm in a city, and Marilyn's going to tell us more about the city specifics, but I'm in a business. What is a business going to do? I mean, I do widgets, like that's my jam. What we're saying is, no, we're regenerating an entire economy, an entire way of living. So when we think about that, we look at the regeneration core competencies. And I think I'm going to just touch on them briefly because I know I need them. I know that my children who are journalists need this. I know that these are not skill sets for people living only in eco-villages. It's for every one of us who are wanting to live on this planet and are wanting to move from the degeneration to the thriving planet that we can be on. System regeneration means how do we reawaken the place that we find ourselves? That could be your organization. That could be your home. That could be your neighborhood. Any place we are asking for system regeneration to find its way. And there are core competencies associated with that. We need to be able to think in frameworks. So, we've got spiral dynamics here and integral theory here and eco-agriculture here. And Well, those are frameworks, and we need to be able to align them, discern which one's best for this situation I'm working in. We are not without, as you say in the chat, without the knowledge. It's how do we translate it? And framework thinking is a skill. It's a competency that we need to use to discern and apply. Of course, central in every part of this is the self-actualized agency, the ongoing ability to have personal agency with a deep understanding of ourselves. You know, we do know that the interior of each of us is where we begin this work. And the MRA is about the interior as well as the exterior. We are working on inside of us as we regenerate ourselves, as we awaken this blueprint that's sitting inside of us, as we work in terms of a higher consciousness, because this is where it's coming from. This blueprint, this frequency, it's here. We have to access it. So agency begins with each of us and our interior landscape, our own work on who we are, how we're showing up in the world. And then how do we then bring that being, that awakened human, into agency on the planet through impact? None of this can be done alone. This is a community, and so developmental facilitation is a skill that all of us require. How do we come into a community and evolve with that community? How do we enter into our family and evolve with that family? This is developmental facilitation. It's a core skill. As a leader, how do I enter into new markets and understand where it is and how I can move my enterprise in through that market? And then here's the real tricky one: living systems intervention. We have to have the competency of knowing where to intervene, how to intervene, when to intervene. The ability to optimize means that we need to understand all of this as living systems and the intervention points that are going to bring us the most regenerative impact. When I look at these skills, these are skills I know my granddaughter probably is encoded with them already at 6 years old, but these are the ones I'm fostering in her. I want her to understand, because she already knows, and my job is to unleash that capability that she has around these core competencies. It's not just that we need them as humans, we need them as systems, as organizations, as businesses, as governments. And so the MRA is about geopolitical advocacy. It's about business reframing. It's about economy. John Fullerton and the 8 new competencies of regenerative economies. These are all in the toolkit that we are co-creating together. So when I think about the last slide, because I know that I'm running out of time, I want us to think about that the MRA has an imperative. You know, Ed took out the re in evolution. We have to generate, we have to vitalize, we have to imagine, we have to invent. And here's the piece that is going to be the most challenging for many of us, and that is that we have to re-enculturate. That means we have to unlearn. You know, those millennials and Gen Zs that are disillusioned, we have to help us unlearn that disillusionment. We have to unlearn the patterns and habits that we have so that we can re-enculturate into a new way of being, a new way of living. And so what really the MRA, the Global Regeneration Core, is about birthing a new civilization. That's what we're here to do. We are in the midst of a birthing. We are letting go of the old and transitioning with competency into this new civilization. That's what's exciting about this. That's what makes me get up no matter what time of day and show up, because I think this is the only game in town if I want my granddaughter to have a life worth living. So, Jim, that's it for me. And our movement that is in motion, that is exciting, that's gathering every day, and that is just full of wisdom that blows my mind.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you so much. As you can see from what Ed and Leslie have presented, that this is a global revitalization. The specific training is being held within the container of a master's in regenerative action. And again, even though this is being housed at Ubiquity, this is not owned by Ubiquity. This is owned by UCI, by GPM, by Integral Cities Meshworks, by all the organizations participating in our movement to regenerate the planetary ecology. I want to now turn it over to Shelley Alcorn, the Chief Operating Officer of Ubiquity, who's been crafting the actual training involved in the curriculum of the MRA for anyone who's interested in going through this process. And what we want to emphasize is that you can do the MRA training for a degree, an accredited degree, or you can do it as an activist just because you want the training and you're not interested in the degree. The MRA is a master's in regenerative action, no matter who you are, where you are, or what you want to do. So I'll turn the program now over to Shelley.
Thank you, everyone, for your time and attention, and for logging in to talk about very difficult subjects. This is a very difficult subject. There is a lot of grief inherent in realizing that the things that we've been talking about since the 1800s about carbon in the atmosphere, this is not new, have reached a tipping point, a lot of different tipping points that we're passing. And part of our job is to take that in and then decide what we're going to do about it. And take that agency and move forward with it. So we're very positive, at the same time understanding that the old systems that created the problem are not going to change overnight. We have to exit those systems and create new systems on the side of them. And prepare to deal with a radically different looking world. Just one example of the way things are coming to roost in just the state of California in the United States. We're one of the biggest polluters. We're one of the countries that has contributed probably the most, in addition to other countries, to the problem that is affecting the least. The folks who least deserve it, who had nothing to do with it. But for an example, we use hydroelectric power in California. We have a hydroelectric system that depends on water. Experts are telling us now that probably by August of this year, Lake Oroville will stop producing power in the state of California, and it powers 800,000 households, basically. Now, this is just a canary in the coal mine, but we need to look at what's happening all over and put those things in a systems context. Because as electricity resources are down, as water resources are down, and as forest fires are coming up, we have less and less ability to use water for crops, for food, for other things. Do you choose between the fires? Do you choose between the food? What are the choices you have to make? And we have to learn how to make those choices. And we have to learn how to access these levels of kindness and these levels of compassion that are absolutely necessary for us to be able to cooperate and help each other. So really quickly, I just want to talk about a couple of access points, and I'll be throwing links in the chat for everybody to access sort of the resources that we're building. And we are building this as we go. This is a plane that's on a runway, and we're shoving things out of the way. I'm putting things on the plane. So there will be lots more information coming out soon. But I'm going to share my screen really quickly and just show you a couple of things. This is ubiquityuniversity.org's website, and we have access to the Master in Regenerative Action degree pages straight from here, and you can learn a little bit more about what we're doing. And learning pathways, degrees and certificates are where we're going to go next, and we're going to focus on the resources that are specifically dedicated to regeneration. We're trying to build really accessible programming for people. And as Jim mentioned, if you don't need an official degree, that's absolutely fine. You can participate in anything that we're doing just as a learner, just as an activist. We're building one community. So it's not students and others. And we're trying to build radical affordability into it as well, with different programs that are under discussion, such as shared tuition, to help students gather together in groups in their local areas and develop impact projects, participate in internships, etc. But if the MA is a typical requirement of an undergraduate degree if you want the MA, but we have options here for folks to get you upskilled faster, to get you into the MRA if you would like to pursue the MA. And the first is our BA completion degree in global skills and regeneration. We can get you up to speed. We accept prior experience. We accept volunteer hours with organizations. We accept prior learning on the job. They're publishing, if you've written a book. There are lots of things that we can issue academic credit for, because we believe that academic credit has to change as well. If every system's changing, we have to change some of the systems that have persistently blocked people from access. And that is not what we need right now. We need as many people as possible spreading the news, spreading the word, and getting upskilled. We also have a full BA in global skills and regeneration, and we have the MRA, the Master in Regenerative Action. You can learn more about the fierce urgency of now, the background. You can meet the players, different folks who are helping out. There's a great video here from Ed Mueller, which we encourage you to forward to people because it talks about what it is that we're doing. This partners list is growing every day, so I'm sure it's outdated because it's outdated every day. We did our first inaugural program with Kate Rayworth on her donut economics, which is now available in an archive session. So you can go back and you can take that course if you'd like independently. We have an application process with an expedited admissions process for the MRA. And we have our director of admissions contact information here if you're interested in talking to her about that. We have the credits. We have courses that are coming online. Some are already online. We have partner courses that we're starting to work with, Gaia Education, other folks that we can send folks to that can come back and import those credits into the degree. And you can learn more about all of the programming in the Ubiquity University Student Handbook. If you click Get Started, that button will take you to our intake form, and you can get started and let us know what you're interested in and how you would like to help. And we'd be happy to walk you through the process. So like we said, we're also aware that time is changing very, very rapidly. And so we're retooling what we do into basically a live and archive methodology. Because things are moving too fast just to sit and take a trimester course and write a paper. That's just not sufficient to meet the moment. So what we are doing is we're working with faculty. I'll be having a faculty orientation call soon. We're setting up those processes, but what we're going to shift to is more the live and archive modality, which is we'll have live courses that are running, like Kate Rayworth's Donut Economics. We had 4 live sessions once a week with Kate. And so it took 4 weeks of 1 day a week for an hour and a half, 2 hours a day to go through her program. We're going to start running those. So faculty will be doing live webinars. So people can come in and take the webinars. As we do the webinars, we videotape them on Zoom, and then we archive them so that anyone can come back and take that course at any time in a self-serve model. We're doing that with nano courses as well. We've been experimenting with this last year, and it works really well. We have where we run a nano course in a week, and we're bundling the nano courses together into a trimester course where people can just take the nano course. So if you need a quick 3 hours on this topic, water reclamation, whatever it happens to be, we're building a series of nano courses that'll be accessible and holding them live, because part of the challenge with an online university is so much of it is done independently by yourself and doesn't feel connected to community. So we want to sort of break that paradigm down a bit and be a live online university where you're able to meet together in class with people, have those discussions. We had 380 people, I think, at the end of Foundation and Donut Economics. And then you'll be able to take courses on your own as you want to. And if you join as a pod, you and your group will go through the courses and work together and establish a group. And hopefully begin to add people to your group as you begin to make changes in your local city, in your local county, in your local state or country. So that's the philosophy behind it. That's how we're building it. That's what it's going to look like. And we're just moving ahead as quickly as we can. We'll be launching new programs in September, and we'll move ahead and do that. Two other things. We have a Regeneration First Responders link that you can sign up with your first name and your last name and your email. And we also have a group on our Ubiverse for Regeneration First Responders, where we're using that for students and for other people who are interested in communications and sharing information about regeneration. So that, in a nutshell, is where we're at. And we would appreciate you checking us out and joining the effort.
Thank you, Shelley, so much for leading us through the particulars of the MRA and the BA. It's a very important process to undergo, everyone, if you really want to become a regeneration first responder. At the heart of it, as Shelley and I and others have noted, is how you are trained to have real impact in the world. And it's the training so that your project is managed in a way that it has the desired result, which is really at the heart of the Global Regeneration Corps and the MRA and BA programs on regeneration. This is all about impact, training for impact. So I want to now turn it over to Joel Carboni, the founder and CEO of Green Project Management, who's developed a methodology, a training program that if you go through his program, you learn about project management in such a way that whatever the project you are focusing on will have real impact in the world. So Joel is a major partner in the MRA and the Global Regeneration Corps, and he'll now describe the Green Project Management process. Joel?
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I'm very happy to be able to present to you all today and talk a little bit about what it is we're doing and how we're working with Ubiquity and UCI and all of our new partners on the MRA. I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully it cooperates. There we go. So what I'm going to be talking about today is the 4 I's of the MRA ecosystem. If you have a degree currently, or you've understand how degrees work normally with a master's degree, you finish at the end with a thesis, which is a document that goes into publication and it sits there and collects dust. I've heard Ed say on several times that the cure for cancer is out there. It's just in a journal somewhere and locked away. So we need to be able to put things in practice for all. And with the MRA, it's unique in that the end will result in a project, and a project that can create change. And whether it's big or small, all projects deliver change. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Really, there are, with the 4 I's, we're looking at one at the top of the I, of course, the project itself. So each person in the program will do a project. And with that, we want that the projects will be managed using regenerative methods. So our tool, it's called the P5 standard. Really, it was designed as regenerative, but we call it sustainable because that was the buzzword. But if you look at how it works, and we'll go through that in the course, and I'll show you a bit of that today, how it's designed, it actually is regenerative in design. And so we want to achieve regenerative outcomes using regenerative methods, because it doesn't work if you just use the same old to create a regenerative outcome. It has to be from A to Z all the way regenerative. And to put it into practice and to bring it to life, we need support. And so the projects will have incubation support, so you can leverage shared resources. We want to actually not just do a concept project or a theoretical project. We want it to be real and to bring benefit to humanity, to the world. So that is the goal. Also, working with like-minded organizations and those organizations who want to regenerate themselves, we want to offer opportunities for internships, so you could put your new competencies into practice. We're talking with all types of organizations, not just those who are in the natural space, but also in manufacturing and business and Wall Streets and you name it. We want to be able to infiltrate and support the change worldwide. And so these competencies will map into any type of work you do, which is great. And last but not least is impact investment. And this is where we would bring funding for the projects. And we're working with many, many funding sources to be able to provide resources to bring your projects to life. So again, not just in theory, but in real practice. And so why projects? A little segue here. Why are we talking about projects? Well, and I recognize that GDP is not the end all be all measure of economic health or growth even, but it's something we can all wrap our heads around quickly. So project work specifically, not just the project outcome, but project work accommodates 30% of global GDP. That's worldwide. Now, some countries, for example, like Germany, it's as high as 40%. So in terms of numbers, we're talking about 24 trillion US dollars in projects. Now, if you took that amount of money and used that for regenerative action, what kind of change could we bring about and how fast? The answer is a lot. The problem is it's being used in an old-fashioned way that's completely degenerative. Anyone who's ever worked in projects or has taken a project management course or workshop or webinar has seen these 4 boxes. And we've been taught since the time of the Great Pyramids that projects are initiated through a business case or a charter, and they're planned out with the planning team and they're executed, and then they create something, whether it's a phone or a pen or a chair or whatever. The project then comes to a close, it becomes a something, whether it's a change or an asset or a project or a product, and then you're done. Well, that's a linear approach. It's degenerative, it's old, it needs to die. That's why we don't do it that way. In reality, this is how projects work. They're cyclical, right? So you have an objective that drives the need for the project or projects. Those deliver outcomes, the close aspect, but also builds capabilities, which triggers change. And that's the change we're talking about. It also enables more outcomes, which also cause side effects and consequences. Now that's what creates all the problems that Edward was talking about earlier, and problems we need to solve. And those side effects and consequences, they realize benefits if you can catch them in time and if you can make change, do them correctly. They also result in disbenefits, which impact the overall outcome or the benefit you intended in the first place that drives the need for more objectives and projects. So in reality, projects are cyclical, they're not linear, because it's not just the product at the end of the day, it's all the change that comes with it. And how we manage that determines our world, determines our future. And that's why we have to look at it from a different kind of a lens. So our approach is a bit unique. Anything you do is authorized by someone or something. What is the need for it? How does it come to be? So we have an authorization process. Then we look at the discovery phase of who, what, when, where, why, how, and what for. We then design it, and the next two can actually be iterative, so they can be agile in practice. They can be, done multiple times to make sure we're doing things the right way, or go back and relook at it again. Then we have the closure, the handoff, then benefits realization. That benefit has to be benefit for all, not just creating a something, but all that came with it. The benefits, disbenefits, the learning, the capabilities, and how that feeds more projects. No one's ever done a project and said, "Oh, that's it. That's all we're going to do." There's always something new. And so that becomes a cyclical event, and projects therefore continue on. That's why we use the Mobius now, not just the initiate to close design. And in doing so, we look at these very specific items. And so when we're talking about regenerative action, we have to be able to hone in on specific areas of the how and the what. So rather than looking at the SDGs, which are top down and do not address the root cause in why we're here in the first place, we have 42 elements that are always kind of in flux. We add a few here, change a few there. But in essence, we're looking at the core three of social, environmental, and economic, but specifically drilling down into areas like labor management relations. How does that work? Age-appropriate labor, anti-corruption, fair competition, protections for indigenous people and tribal peoples. So the social impacts are there. We're also going to look at how do we create value, not just reduce impact, but create value and regenerate using local procurement, looking at CO2 emissions, looking at water consumption, just as was talked about earlier in California. How is that being looked at through our project? And so we have to look at all these areas and how we're driving benefit, right? And so that's how we're going to use the project management aspect of this program to help to codify all these competencies and theories into actual tangible practice and take this into all the various sectors of professionalism in the world, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's agriculture, no matter what it is, these will map over and translate, and to help us drive these into the way we do what we do and create a better world for all of us. So I'm going to be very short today. That's what we're bringing to the program. And we're very excited to be part of this with all you guys. And hopefully you'll all take part in this. We can all grow and learn together. So let's regenerate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you so much. When we think of having projects that have impact, we're also thinking about how the impact projects can be localized in both bioregions and in cities. Most of us live in urban areas. So the impact that we're going to be making will be principally in urban environments. And that's a very specific ecology, and it's a very specific way of being in the world. So one of our major partners is the Integral Cities Meshwork. So I'd like to now introduce Marilyn Hamilton, who will talk about the impact projects in the MRA and Global Regeneration Core within a city framework. And then we want to bring Ed Mueller back in, who's been deeply immersed in bioregions, because that's a whole other domain of endeavor. But when you think of the Masters in Regenerative Action, you think of an impact project. Think in terms of cities and bioregions. That's how we're wanting to initiate the Global Regeneration Core. So first, Marilyn Hamilton.
Thanks so much, Jim. And thanks so much, team, for setting up a way to look at cities that I can now say that we can't have a Global Regeneration Core if we don't consider cities. So what I would like to do is to share a screen as well. And as I just said, we can't have a Global Regeneration Core without cities. I sometimes call cities human hives, and they need first responders too. So we know that more than 50% of humanity lives in cities. And up to 90% of them actually live in the developed world. So we really have to consider cities as being responsible for some of the devastation that Ed has so clearly laid out for us. For instance, we know that cities are responsible for emitting 50% of the CO2 that it's now quickly warming our planet beyond the tolerance for humans and all life, as Ed Mueller so clearly described. And those of you who have endured the heat waves in the last weeks and the fires and floods in cities around the world know the truth of this. Cities can be considered the bane of existence on Earth, or we can listen to James Lovelock, who's the author of the Gaia hypothesis, that the Earth is a living system. Our planet Gaia is a living system. Humans are an intimate part of our planetary living system, but humans have separated themselves from nature, thinking we are somehow removed from it or even above it. This has been a tragic error in relationships that we have with all living systems on the planet. In other words, humans are suffering from a nature disconnection disorder. So when we're thinking about cities, it's time for humans everywhere, but especially in cities where most of us live, to heal the massive wounds we have inflicted on nature, on our bioregions, and on Gaia herself. Regeneration first responders in cities need to start with reconnecting each city to nature inside the city and to our bioregions that embrace us. We need to take responsibility for the well-being of relationships with all living systems. It turns out that humans are as dependent for food on the well-being of pollinating insects as the quality of our air and water is dependent on the living soils of our gardens, our farms, and our fields. Regeneration first responders must learn how to consume a new kind of donut, explained by Kate Raworth's donut economics that's already been mentioned. And we must rebalance the city's relationship to the 9 key ecological dimensions that are set out around the outside of the donut. And we must appreciate the interconnections of all the dimensions of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, that sweeten the center of the donut. Even if we want to upgrade and move on beyond the SDGs, we know that the center of the donut is where we will hold social justice issues that must be balanced with our outer ecological ceilings. All this may seem like a really impossible task, but our integral city intelligence confirm what James Lovelock says. He says that humans are Gaia's reflective organs, and our cities are those reflective organs, I believe. They're connected in a natural living web around the world with living organizations that act like the organelles in those organs and individual humans like cells inside our city organs. We need city regeneration first responders to care for every aspect of our human systems, to care for ourselves so that we can care for others, so that together we can care for our places and all together we can care for our planet. Regeneration first responders come from the 4 voices of the integral city. Those are the citizens, the business innovators, the civic managers, and the civil society, or the third sector. And now it's time for all those city voices, not just to speak out, but to act as a team of regeneration first responders. So as Shelley has so beautifully outlined, we are inviting you to join the MRA, and I would like to especially invite you to join Integral City along with the coalition that is contributing to the MRA. We want to regenerate our city relationships with all life, with the bioregions and Gaia herself. for now, and also unto the 7th generation, as our Indigenous ancestors and our peoples around the earth tell us today. So we would ask that, invite you to join the next live Beyond Resilient Inquiry, Action, and Impact. That will be the next course that we deliver live through the MRA, through Ubiquity. And we will help you design an impact project to regenerate your community, your city, and your ecoregion. We'll show you how to work in teams, and we'll bring a whole set of integral city intelligences that will work with our regeneration competencies that we've talked about. Our next course starts September the 8th, so that's coming up very quickly. And you can find the details, we'll put them in the chat. So thanks. That's what I have to say about cities and why they're so important for us to weave them in, to create the meshwork, as I said, so that we can all work together. Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you, Marilyn. And now I'd like to bring Ed back in to talk a little bit more about the network of bioregions that is starting to come into the coalition. Ed?
Yeah, thank you. I'll be very quick because we're running out of time. In 2018, we launched the Regenerative Communities Network with Capital Institute. There are also many, many other networks, the Eco Village Network. And what we're trying to do is bring all of these spaces together so we can actually co-create solutions for the challenges we're facing right now at the global level. We think that a farmer who maybe didn't go to school at all has a lot of power just as a Nobel Prize scientist. So we have to use all knowledge sources, and there's nothing better than to working at the local scale. So what Marilyn said about turning cities back into supporting life, I think the cities should be part of the landscape. They shouldn't interrupt the landscape, the functional part of the landscapes. So integrating different bioregions in different continents, we now have 15 regenerative sites in the network in 8 countries and 4 continents. Melina, who is the secretary, the executive director of the network, arrived here to Costa Rica last night at midnight. And we will be working over the next couple of weeks on seeing how we can move this forward. We have over 70 new bioregions that are asking to join the network. So it's going to be a network for co-creation of solutions, bringing the theoretical components that we can see in the MRA, the practical components, and the true life experience. So the idea is students that participate in the program can choose where in the world they want to go and practice regeneration. And this is going to be just so transformative because these solutions don't have to go through a process where they get stuck in book museums. They'll be used on a day-to-day basis, and we go learning as we go. So I'll stop there because I think Hugo still has to come on, and maybe we can have a bigger session one day about what these bioregions can actually bring to the table. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Ed. So that, my friends, is the essence of our enterprise here and coalition around developing regeneration first responders through a training program focalized through this Masters in Regenerative Action and BA program, focusing on impact, linked to bioregions, linked to cities. We welcome everyone, wherever you are, either for a degree or just simple training. We want everyone to come in pods so that the group can share tuition so that it's radically democratic and radically affordable. And we are also raising money for scholarships so that anybody anywhere that wants to become a regeneration first responder and join the Global Regeneration Corps is welcome. You contact us, any one of us on this call and others, and we'll work with you to find a way to turn you into a first responder at a critical moment of human choice. One of the people in our network, Hugo Arroyo, is a master visual artist. So I want to now, as we conclude, turn it over to Hugo, who will show us in pictures and graphs what we're seeking to bring into the world. Hugo?
Thank you, Jim. And it's a real honor for me to be here and sharing, as you said, from the creative and artistic perspective, what we are all doing all together around here. So for me, something that is clear is that humanity is rising, and it's something that we need to acknowledge. So I'm going to start by saying that what we're building here is this new regenerative narrative, the Regen narrative. And it seems that we are moving into becoming a superorganism as humanity, where shared purpose is one of our main possibilities. Also, we are moving into a narrative that actually aligns us with the context as ecosystem thinking does and nature-based solutions. Indeed, we live in a planetary ecosystem that is water-based. So this visualization helps us to understand and to see all the blue bases of our planet. As Edward was mentioning, this is another perspective of one city. This is Mexico City, believe it or not. This is the watershed of the Mexico City's valley, and the possibility of connecting the people living in the city with the living context that is a city and following performance. So what if instead of just building from the city, we build from nature and we create nature positive place-based knowledge? And this is what we're trying to do. And going nature positive, meaning getting into this regen gap where we go from degenerative to regenerative in one quantum leap that we are looking for. So understanding the bioregions in a whole different way with different lenses, it's an imperative. In Costa Rica, Regenerativa, we are also building a bottom-up approach, technological approach. So we can also hear the fractal voices of the locals in terms of the bioregion. What do they want? What do they see? What do they want us to see? So in general, this digital membrane is a way to radically collaborate and connect different perspectives, such as cryptocurrencies, purpose-driven principles, and different kinds of approaches, such as the donut economics. So it is about building healthy bioregions in a personal and planetary way, aligned with life and water-based. So we have a metabolic earth. The MRA, it is a substitution of this business as usual, so MBA. So we want to create an evolutionary blueprint with regenerative businesses. And the global reach of Ubiquitins University, it is very clear. And this is why we need to all collaborate in terms of our global capabilities. And we need radical collaboration for this unity consciousness that we are creating. And the topic of today, of course, is the Global Regeneration Corps. And we are all courageous co-creators. That doesn't mean that we have the answer, but we are co-creating this answer. For doing this, we have gone through different kinds of participatory sessions, and we have been able to understand where is our common ground. And we want to move from linear to ecosystemic, from maximization to optimization, from competitive to collaborative, and from scarcity to abundance. So this master in regenerative action, it is really about unlearn and exchange. And it is meant to be for regeneration first responders. So how to be a pioneer, an entrepreneur, and how to be future ready. So we want to connect community tools and resources for this learning global passport as a toolkit for everyone who wants to become a regenerative action leader. So co-create critical skills in cohorts of 5 in a multi-generational way, but also with impact projects, as Joel was saying, about incubation, internships, and investment. So you are going to be able to create your own pathway at the same time that you are learning and acting. So the big question is, how do we create thriving ecosystems? This is the challenge of our time in steps of regeneration. And this is how we have approached our participation in this possibility of the core courses, the core competencies, and as a multisensorial, transdisciplinary, open and useful paradigm shifting experience. So maybe this is the way that we all need to understand how to add value to each other, because nature has shown us that generosity is crucial if we want to create a change. So the MRA is about integral ecosystem, where we can be as a person, as a first responder, about impact projects, investment, internships, incubators. And especially with the digital membrane, we are aiming to build this strategic intention is about enriching our competencies and going from a local on learning to global exchange, from bioregions, topics, domains, to network, project, and experiences. So we hope to create a beautiful transformation on the ground, and transform action could be also a nice way to put it. So this is just a small drawing that I did, and it is just to express that it is also about putting our love there and trying to bring this positive change with different actors. And this coalition takes us all, takes humanity. And thank you for having all this together. And again, this is a great honor to be sharing with you.
Thank you, Hugo. A picture's worth 1,000 words, and your last picture of a heart with the MRA right in the center, and the different partners that are coming together to activate it is a beautiful image with which to bring our session today to a close. All of us represented on this call today, everyone, are coming together as one. This is one of those projects and enterprises where there's no single ownership. This is being owned collectively, because only collectively can we make any kind of difference. That's why we've been emphasizing through Humanity Rising the whole notion of radical collaboration. And I think that that is the spirit with which the whole thing has taken place. And it's the spirit with which we want to now interact with any of you out there that want to join either as a partner or as a student. And Leslie Southwick put her email in the chat, so please be in touch with her or be in touch with any of us. Our vision is to create pods, groups of students, 4, 5, 6 in number, whatever group works, to come together to go through this training process that will include not only techniques, as you saw from Joel Carboni, about how you really create an effective project, but which includes incubator, accelerator, investment fund, internships, so how you can really have an impact in the world. But the other equally important dimension of the MRA and this program and the Global Regeneration Corps is interior self-mastery. We're heading into a whirlwind of turbulence, and we have to have as much strength in our interior, in our capacity to be resilient, as we need to have strength professionally in our exterior. So when you're thinking about participating in the MRA, you're thinking about becoming part of the Global Regeneration Corps. Think about how you need to develop your interior and your exterior around those competencies that Leslie mentioned associated with regeneration, so that you can truly be an active change agent in the world. So we would like hundreds and thousands of organizations to join. We would like hundreds and thousands of pods of young people principally, but also Gen Ys and boomers, learners of all ages to come together at this critical moment in a common enterprise held by everybody to do what is necessary to regenerate and reimagine and renew humanity's presence on this precious planet of ours. So that's why we're here. That's what we're launching today. And I want to close by thanking all of you in the spirit of Hugo's last picture of a coalition shaped in a heart, at the center of which is the regeneration of our earth and human communities. So Ed and Leslie, Shelley, Joel, Marilyn, Hugo, thank you so much for being present at the launch of the Global Regeneration Corps. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you here again tomorrow, same time, same station, for another episode of Humanity Rising on the theme of regeneration. Bye for now.